Potter Subcommittee Testimony continued by narrator, Chapter 6, Part 3. Mr. Reed, Colonel Pelton is a nephew of yours? Tilden, yes sir. Reed, when did he first begin to reside in your house? Tilden. About 9 years ago, I think. Reed. When did he cease his residence there? Tilden, about the 1st of July. Reed. He had been your military secretary while you were governor. And was at the time of these transactions your military secretary? Tilden, he was. Reed, and with your knowledge and consent was the acting secretary of the Democratic National Committee? Tilden, he was not with my consent, though he was with my knowledge. Reed, you knew it? Tilden, I knew he called himself acting secretary. Reed, you knew he was really acting secretary? Tilden, I knew he was very active in the business. Reed, and that he was really acting secretary? Tilden, I came down from Albany in the latter part, the 3rd or 4th week, of September. The canvass was 2/3 completed while I was in Albany. When I came down here I found Colonel Pelton acting as secretary. Reed, did you make any objection to his acting as secretary? Tilden, I did. Reed, to whom? Tilden, to several gentlemen of the committee. Reed, will you kindly name them? Tilden, I cannot now. Reed, cannot you name any of them? Tilden, no. Reed, did you make any objection to him, and request him to cease acting in that capacity? Tilden, I did not request him to cease, but I was not pleased with it, for several reasons. Reed, did you manifest your displeasure to him? Tilden, I manifested my regret. Reed, to whom? Tilden, to him. Reed, what did he say? Tilden, I cannot tell you. Reed, but you did not go to the extent of insisting on his ceasing to act in that capacity? Tilden, I did not. I have no hesitation in stating to you all about it. Reed, of course I cannot go into the whole matter, only want to go into certain aspects of it. Did you know Smith M. Weed? Tilden, yes sir. Reed, how long have you known him? Tilden, I cannot say, some years. Reed, has he been in confidential relations with you? Tilden, no more than many prominent Democrats. Reed, but as much as other prominent Democrats? Tilden, as much as some and less than others. Reed, when did you first know he was in South Carolina? Tilden, not till after he came back. Reed, was it concealed from you? Tilden, I do not know. No, I guess not. Reed, how did it happen that you did not know he was there? Tilden, because I did not undertake to know all that was being done by the committee. Reed, did you not undertake to keep the general run of it, and of what was going on in the South? Tilden, not a very close run. Reed, well, you undertook to keep the run of it, didn't you? Tilden, when the legal proceedings in Florida were in agitation I gave particular attention to them. I did not undertake to keep much run of these visiting statesmen. Reed, not even to know their names? Tilden, I knew their names when I heard them through the public journals. Reed, and you say now you knew nothing of Smith Weed's presence in South Carolina until after his return? Tilden, I say so positively. Reed, did you have any talk with Weed about his transmittal of this proposition? Tilden, I presume I did. Reed, well, sir, state it. Tilden, in which I took him to task for taking part in such transactions? I did not feel particularly responsible for Weed. Reed, at the time was the Oregon affair published, Governor Tilden? Tilden, published as the result of an investigation by a subcommittee of the Senate. Reed, about what time? Tilden, I cannot tell you the date. Reed, about what time? Tell as nearly as you can. Tilden, in the winter of 1877. Reed, Pelton remained in your house during that time until July, after the publication of the Oregon dispatches. Tilden, he did. Reed, Manton Marble occupied confidential relations with you, didn't he? Tilden, he occupied relations with me which to a certain extent were confidential. Reed, he stopped to bid you goodbye before he started to Florida. Do you remember that interview? Tilden, I recollect seeing him before he went to Florida. Reed, what transpired at the interview? Tilden, nothing more than leave-taking. I gave him no instructions as to what he should do, no suggestions. Reed, you say you did not keep a very close run, and did not pay much attention to what the visiting statesmen were doing there, if I understand you right, in South Carolina and Florida. Do I? Tilden, yes. Reed, did you have any purpose in not doing that? Tilden, I had not. I suppose they had been selected by the committee of the Democratic Party to do a particular duty, and were competent to do it, and I did not undertake to supervise or direct them. I did not give any human being any advice or instructions in that connection. Reed, did Edward Cooper, when he told you of that South Carolina proposition, inform you that he had given your nephew any encouragement that he would furnish the money? Tilden, he did not. Reed, did he make any suggestion of any kind which conveyed that idea in any way to your mind? Tilden, he did not. As I before said, the conversation was very brief. It opened by a mere statement of facts, and I responded so quickly that there was no chance for any discussion. I was irritated at the idea of Pelton mixing himself up in any such transaction. If I had felt disposed to engage in such a transaction, Pelton would have been the last man in the United States that I would have commissioned to have anything to do with it, or allowed to have anything to do with it. I considered his interference to be a piece of officious meddling. Reed, you published a card on or about October 18th, relating to these dispatches, did you not? Tilden, I did. Reed, in that card you made no allusion to these particulars of your knowledge of the transaction which failed at Baltimore, did you? Tilden, I did not. Reed, why not? Tilden, there was no occasion to do it. Reed, I ask the question, why you did not state in this card of explanation to the public, the particulars that you did know of this Baltimore transaction? Tilden, because it was not pertinent to what I was stating. Reed, in one paragraph in the letter you say, I have no knowledge of the existence of these telegrams, nor any information about them, except what has been derived from or since the publications of the Tribune. Tilden, that is true. Reed, yes sir, but were you not aware at the time that that would convey, and did you not intend it to convey, the impression to the public that you knew nothing about these transactions until the publication of the dispatches in the Tribune? Tilden, I did not intend to convey anything of the kind. Reed, do not you see that it does convey that? Tilden, no, I do not. Reed, I mean to a reader who does not know as much as you do. Tilden, read the phraseology, and you will find it as I say. Reed, I have no knowledge of the existence of these telegrams, nor any information about them, except what has been derived from or since the publications of the Tribune. That is literally true you say? Tilden, certainly. Reed, you say it is literally true, but don't you see that it conveys, and did you not intend it to convey, to the public, at the time, the impression that you knew absolutely nothing about the transactions themselves? Tilden, no, I did not. Reed, you at least concealed the fact, or at least you did not make public the fact, that you had information with regard to the transactions themselves? Tilden, will you be good enough to read the next sentence? Reed, so much of these telegrams generally, but then you proceed to speak of Florida. I am confining myself to the South Carolina ones. You can see the letter, I want to be perfectly frank with you. Tilden, you will observe that the two states of Florida and South Carolina are treated separately for this publication. The paragraph immediately following deals in detail with South Carolina. Reed, oh, no, it deals with the Board of Canvassers of Florida. Tilden, no, it deals with South Carolina. Reed, it does in the copy I have. Tilden, read the next paragraph under, secondly. Reed, very well, I will call your attention to that. You say, secondly, as to the publications in the Tribune purporting to be translations of cipher telegrams relating to the canvass of votes in South Carolina, I can speak of them no less definitely and positively. None of such telegrams, either in cipher or translated, was ever shown to me, or its contents made known to me. There you confine your denial that you knew anything about it to the telegrams, and do not deny the fact that you knew of the transaction. Tilden, well? Reed, well, now, does it not strike you, and did it not at the time, that that was calculated to convey to the public the impression that you not only knew nothing of the telegrams, and their contents as such, but also that you knew nothing of the transaction? Tilden, no. Reed, will you look at it and see if that would not be the natural conclusion from that? Tilden, the question was what I knew about these telegrams. I knew nothing about them. Reed, was not the ultimate question what you knew about the transaction? Tilden, that was a separate question. Reed, was not the question which you were replying to before the public? Tilden, I will deal with that in a moment. If you observe, my language is different in the case of South Carolina, and of Florida. Reed, but it is a difference that one would not notice until after this discussion? Tilden, I cannot help your understanding of the language. The language is used with perfect accuracy and perfect truth. The proposition was this: I could not say I knew nothing about any negotiation in South Carolina, for I knew very little. I knew nothing that was contained in any of these telegrams, I knew no details of any of these negotiations, but I did know there had been an offer, and I knew the offer had been refused through my intervention. That is all I knew. I did not know that there had any further negotiations that to receive the offer and finally to refuse it. I did not know that there had been any offer in Florida, so the language of the statement had to be different. Reed, that is, you were avoiding a misstatement on account of certain facts which you knew, and which at the same time you knew the public did not know. Isn't that true? Tilden, certainly. Reed, and so you made your denial in such shape and form that it would avoid this fact when it became known, did you? Tilden, I made my denial. Reed, interrupting, consistent with this fact when it should become known? Tilden, strictly consistent with the truth. Reed, but you say, no one of such telegrams, either in cipher or translated, as ever shown to me, or its contents made known to me. Were you not conscious, then, at that time that that matter which you were explaining to the public was not the telegrams after all, but the negotiations? Tilden, I cover that in my next sentence. Reed, but you don't cover it in this? Tilden, I did not do everything in one sentence. Be good enough to read the next sentence. Reed, yes, I am very familiar with it. Why did you, Governor Tilden, when you came to make this answer to the public, say frankly that you knew of the transaction, so far as you did know of it, and that you then stamped it out instead of using language, which, as you see, might convey to the public the impression that you not only knew nothing about the telegrams, but nothing about the transaction itself? Tilden, I do not see anything of the kind. On the contrary, any intelligent man understands the English language would understand that. Reed, in the light of the present testimony, do you mean? Tilden, without reference to that. Reed, would anybody infer from this letter that you had any information with regard to the transaction at all? Tilden, no man would infer that I had no knowledge of the offers. There might have been 1,000 offers made without my knowledge. Reed, did you intend to convey the impression that no offers had been made to you? Tilden, I did not, I intended to avoid that assumption. Reed, then why did you not frankly state what was the fact? Tilden, because, if there had been 100 men talking to me about such transactions, suggesting and advising them, I was under no obligation, and had no occasion, to state it to the public. Reed, but there were not 100 men, there was one particular transaction to which your attention had been directed by the Tribune disclosure. Why did not you mention that one transaction? If you intended to deal frankly with the public, why did you not mention that one transaction? Tilden, I had not seen any of these parties, and did not know whether the dispatches were true or not. I did not know anything about them. When I drew this card, I had not seen a human being with regard to them. I had not seen Weed, I had not seen Pelton. I was not going to inculpate them on subjects which I did not know anything about. Read, but at that time you did not know that Pelton had gone to Baltimore to engage in a transaction of that kind? Tilden, I did not say that. Read, why did you conceal from the public your knowledge of that fact? Tilden, I knew only that Pelton had gone there to receive a proposition. Read, why did you keep that fact from the public? That would not incriminate anybody except those whom you knew deserved to be incriminated. Tilden, I did not know that. Read, why did you not state that? Tilden, it was not necessary, it was not pertinent. Read, was it not necessary for the information of the community? You undertook to inform the community as to what you knew about this matter. Now, undertaking to inform them by sitting down and writing that letter on the subject, how did it happen that you omitted this fact, of which you knew? That is what I want to get at. Tilden, because that fact was not pertinent to my discussion. Read, was it not pertinent to the information which you were giving to the public as to your knowledge of this subject? Tilden, it was not pertinent to the things I undertook to the state. Read, that is, among the things you undertook to state this was not? Tilden, no. Read, you say that the transaction of the Board of Canvassers to Florida was mentioned to you casually, as a past event, accompanied by the statement that the offer had been rejected. Tilden, yes. Read, by whom was that made? Tilden, by Marble. Read, why did you not, in your card, inform the public who stated that to you? Tilden, it was not necessary. Read, did the non-necessity of withholding that information arise from the fact that on the face of those dispatches Marble was very severely incriminated, and your own statement that he had mentioned it to you would tend to confirm the public impression of that transaction? Tilden, not at least, I should not have hesitated to put his name in. Read, you cannot state why you did not? Tilden, no. Read, why was it omitted? It looks to me as if it had been studiously omitted. What have you to say with regard to that? Tilden, it was not. Read, you did not keep it out on purpose, or in furtherance of any design that you then had in your own mind? Tilden, no. Read, nor did you keep out this Baltimore transaction in furtherance of any design that you had in your own mind? Tilden, the Baltimore transaction stands on a different basis, and it was not consummated. Read, that you did intentionally keep it out? Tilden, I did not intentionally keep it out, I had no intention of putting it in. Read, did you not very carefully draw these sentences so as to avoid coming in conflict with that fact after it came out, if it should come out? Tilden, no, I drew these sentences very carefully so as to conform the exact truth. Read, not only to the exact truth so far as the public knew it, but also to the exact truth so far as you knew it? Tilden, yes. Read, did you have any interview with Weed before he left for South Carolina? Tilden, I did not, I never saw him after the election until after he got back from South Carolina. Read, do you remember having an interview with him at any bank? Tilden, I do not. Read, nor any conversation with him at any bank? Tilden, I do not. Read, do you recollect the bank that was named in connection with the Oregon affair? Tilden, the Third National? Read, I think that is it, Jordan's Bank, the bank that kindly advanced, on the suggestion of Colonel Pelton, or of somebody else, $8,000 for legitimate legal expenses in Oregon. Did you have an interview with him at that bank? Tilden, I do not think I did, I do not remember any. Read, can you tell us whether you did or did not? Tilden, you mean at what time? Read, with Smith Weed, prior to his departure to Florida after the election. Tilden, I do not think I did. Read, can you not put it any stronger than that you do not think you did? Tilden, I do not believe that I did. Read, don't you know whether you did or did not? Be frank with us. Tilden, I am perfectly frank with you, sir. I have no recollection or belief of any such interview. Reed, did you ever see him there? Tilden, I do not recollect. I may have seen him there. Reed, do I understand you to say that you have no recollection, distinct and positive, of meeting him there at any particular time? Tilden, I do not remember meeting him there at any particular time. Reed, do you remember meeting him there at all, at any time? Tilden, I have no distinct recollection of it, though very possible I may have met him there at some time. Reed, did you not have a long conversation with him prior to his departure for Florida, at the Third National Bank? Tilden, Florida? Reed, North Carolina or South Carolina? Tilden, I don't think I did. Reed, can you not state it more positively than that? Tilden, I feel sure that I did not see him at all. Reed, you feel sure that you did not see him and did not have the conversation with him to which I alluded? Tilden, yes. Reed, did I understand you to say that as to Florida you did not know that there had been an offer? Tilden, until after the 6th of December. Reed, about what time was it that Marble communicated this fact to you? Tilden, I cannot state definitely. Reed, but I understood you to say that it was before the publication of his Ark and Shekinah letter? Tilden, yes. Reed, did Marble consult you with regard to the publication of that celebrated piece of rhetoric? Tilden, he probably talked to me on the subject. Reed, did he read to you any of the sentences in it? Tilden, I think very likely he may have done so. Reed, the publication was with your assent? Tilden, not with my assent, nor with my disapproval. Reed, did you make any comments, after your knowledge of the Baltimore transaction, that it was rather a harsh sort of letter for him to write? Tilden, I did not. Reed, nor any suggestion that there was anything hypocritical about it? Tilden, no, sir, there was not, so far as I knew. Reed, you had not arrived at that full knowledge which you possessed since the publication of the Tribune dispatches? Tilden, no. Note: New York Republican Representative Frank Hiskek joins Reed in the cross-examination of Mr. Tilden. Hiskek, do I understand you to say that you saw the telegram to George W. Smith, dated November 27, from Tallahassee? Tilden, I do not remember anything about it. Reed, have you any doubt that you did see it, it having been addressed to your private secretary at Gramercy Park? Tilden, I do not know that any such telegram existed or was ever received. I don't remember anything about it. Hiskek, do you remember the contents of it as it has been read to you here by Reed? Tilden, I remember seeing it here. Hiskek, reading: It has been suggested from here to Governor of Oregon to refrain from issuing certificate in favor of ineligible elector until advised thereon. Why not obtain and telegraph him O'Connor's opinion? See my dispatch to Spain. Have you no recollections of seeing that at all? Tilden, I have not. I may have seen it. Hiskek, have you any doubt that a dispatch of that kind addressed to your private secretary was shown to you? Tilden, I think if he had received it he probably showed it to me. Hiskek, in that dispatch occurs this phrase, see my dispatch to Spain. If you saw that dispatch, would not the phrase have attracted your attention? Tilden, it might. Hiskek, have you any doubt that it would? Tilden, it may have done so. Hiskek, I ask you whether the phrase in that dispatch, see my dispatch to Spain, would not have attracted your attention? Tilden, perhaps it would, and perhaps it would not. Hiskek, you felt intensely interested over the result in Florida? Tilden, I felt interested, of course, not intensely. Hiskek, you felt interested as a presidential candidate and as the representative of your party, did you not? Tilden, I did. Hiskek, and you were watching the proceedings in those states with very great interest? Tilden, I was watching the proceedings with a certain amount of interest. Hiskek, do I infer from that that you were watching the proceedings with indifference? Tilden, not absolute indifference. Hiskek, did not you keep yourself advised, so far as you were able, as to the steps that were being taken there? Tilden, I did not occupy myself about things which I knew I could not control. Hiskek, were you not sufficiently interested to keep yourself advised as to what was going on and the steps that were being taken there? Tilden, not very fully. Hiskek, if a dispatch were shown you containing the phrase, "See my dispatch to Spain," would not the very language of the phrase and the words that were employed in connection with it, one of them being a cipher word, have attracted your attention? Tilden, it might have done so. Hiskek, and especially a dispatch of that kind, coming from such a discreet, trusted, and influential member of the party as Manton Marble. Have you any doubt that it would have attracted your attention, coming from him? Tilden, I do not think it all certain I should have paid much attention to it. Hiskek, now, preceding that dispatch and the one to which it must refer is this dispatch, you are imperiling result here by causing divided counsels and neglecting to answer telegrams. I advise that you find one person to trust, and then trust him for at least 1 calendar week, possibly 2. I will stand in nobody's way, and do my best to transfer to him authority. About 100 majority on certified copies, Republicans claim same upon returns. Rome needless now, should be recalled. Tilden, whom does Rome mean? Hiskek, I do not know. Tilden, you ought to know. Hiskek, continues to read, Rome needless now, should be recalled. Paris and detectives always useless, ditto Woolley, here as in Louisiana a nuisance and impediment, trusted by nobody. I decline to commit Tilden with men so indiscreet. Smith concurs in all aforesaid. Session begun. To Tilden, have you recollection of having ever seen that dispatch? Tilden, I know that I never did. Hiskek, have you at any time during the progress of the contest in Florida understood that upon certified copies of the returns the Democrats had, or that you had, 100 majority for your election? Tilden, a 93 or 95. Hiskek, then you did understand at one time that upon certified copies of the returns the Democrats had the majority on the Tilden electoral ticket from 93 to 100. Tilden, including Baker County, undoubtedly. Hiskek, do you know how that information was conveyed here? Tilden, I do not, I think I saw it in the newspapers. Hiskek, do you mean to say that you had no earlier information than that which appeared in the newspapers upon that subject? Tilden, I do not believe that I had. Hiskek, and this dispatch you are entirely confident that you never saw, although it was a dispatch sent to Gramercy Park? Tilden, I know that I never saw it. Hiskek, and do you believe that none of your friends at that time would have taken the liberty of intercepting any dispatches which were sent to Gramercy Park, and upon a subject on which you were certainly as vitally interested as any one else? Tilden, the dispatch was not addressed to me. Hiskek, no, it was addressed to you, but it, or one other, is the dispatch which is referred of November 27, which was addressed to George W. Smith. Tilden, I understand that the dispatches addressed to Colonel Pelton at the house in Gramercy Park, were delivered by the telegraph people, by standing order, at the committee rooms. Hiskek, I understand that either this or a subsequent dispatch which I will soon read, is the one referred to in the phrase, "See my dispatch to Spain." This is the one. There is a dispatch, which I have been calling your attention to, addressed to George W. Smith, which has in it the phrase, "See my dispatch to Spain." Tilden, what dispatch is that? Hiskek, the one which I have been reading, or one other which I will read, must be that dispatch. I will now read the second one to which that phrase may refer. To Colonel Pelton, No. 15 Gramercy Park, New York. Please yourself about economy suggested, coil exceedingly useful hitherto. You did not answer my inquiry about Paris, and only mention him at this late date. That promotes unity of action, I suppose. Mention names of Florida friends when you wish to learn how much weight their several requests deserve. Fox impedes daily. It is no relief that you assume responsibility for difficulties he makes. Do not fail to read message to Smith, 15 and 20 cipher. M.M. Hiskek, did you see that dispatch? Tilden, no, I did not. Hiskek, you never saw that dispatch? Tilden, no sir. Hiskek, then, if I understand you, you took no steps to see the dispatch which is described in this phrase, see my dispatch which is described in this phrase, see my dispatch to Spain, and you have no recollection of its ever having been shown to you, although the dispatch referring to it was directed to your own private secretary? Tilden, I have no recollection of taking any steps to see any of these other dispatches, if I saw this one. Hiskek, how old a person was George W. Smith? Tilden, about 25 or 30. Hiskek, you have no idea that he would have taken the responsibility of intercepting or failing to exhibit to you any dispatch which he received? Tilden, no. Hiskek, you have no idea of that kind? Tilden, no. Hiskek, you have no idea but that a dispatch which was sent to him in cipher, and which he could not understand, or which he could not read, if he had procured it to be translated, that he would have furnished you the translation? Tilden, I should think he would. Hiskek, he resided in New York City at this time, as I understand? Tilden, yes, he was my personal secretary. Hiskek, is he now? Tilden, he is now, at this time. Hiskek, do I understand you to say that the first intimation that you had of the closeness of the contest in Florida was through the newspapers? Tilden, I do not remember what my first information was. Hiskek, you have no recollection upon that subject? Tilden, I think if you will look at the newspapers of the same date as the dispatch, you will find the same information. The newspapers generally get ahead of private dispatches. Hiskek, I find this dispatch sent from New York to both Colonel Woolley in Manton Marble, directed to them both at Tallahassee, reported here that board have given us 1 vote. Do you remember hearing that? Tilden, I do not. Hiskek, do you remember hearing any rumor of that kind? Tilden, I do not. Hiskek, this is a dispatch which was sent by Colonel Pelton to both of these gentlemen as to a rumor which had reached New York, and which they had received. That your electoral ticket had received 1 vote. And you never heard that? That one of your electors was elected. Tilden, I do not remember ever hearing that. Hiskek, do you remember ever having heard it even suggested? Tilden, no. You mention, Woolley, I had no knowledge of information of his having been there. Hiskek, I am only examining you now upon the question of whether so important a fact as that contained in a dispatch requiring an answer, addressed to 2 gentlemen in Florida, that it was rumored here in New York that one of Tilden's electors was elected, whether you did not learn that? Tilden, I think I did not, as far as I remember. Hiskek, can you say that you did not learn it, or do you say that it is very likely that you have forgotten it, if you did not know it? Tilden, I say that I have not the slightest recollection of ever hearing it. Hiskek, there was this dispatch, dated December 4th, of which I have only read a part. I will read the whole dispatch, reported here that board have given us 1 vote. If so, you will not need to use acceptance. Advise fully. You never heard of any such dispatch as that having been sent to these men? Tilden, I never did. Hiskek, during this canvass, who here in New York did you understand were in consultation with these gentlemen in South Carolina and Florida by telegraph? Tilden, I suppose the committee or some of their agents. Hiskek, didn't you advise yourself on the subject? Tilden, I did not particularly. Hiskek, did you not learn the fact, was it not communicated to you, who it was at this end of the line that was in consultation with the gentlemen who were sent to South Carolina and Florida? Tilden, I did not consider that anybody was there especially in consultation. Hiskek, what Democratic gentlemen were there here in New York that you understood that the visiting statesmen in South Carolina and Florida were in communication with? Tilden, I assumed that they were in communication with the National Democratic Committee, or with their subordinates. Hiskek, that is, you assumed that the Democratic National Committee, or some members of it, were here in New York, and in consultation with and being advised of the steps which were being taken by these gentlemen in South Carolina? Tilden, I suppose that some consultations and communications existed. I did not suppose an extensive consultation did exist or could exist. Hiskek, did you understand at any time that legal proceedings were being taken in South Carolina to restrain the returning board in South Carolina? Tilden, I did. Hiskek, who communicated that fact to you? Tilden, I do not remember. Hiskek, do you remember whether it was communicated in cipher? Tilden, not to me in cipher. Nothing was ever communicated to me in cipher. Hiskek, did you understand during the progress of this canvass that proceedings were being instituted, and successfully instituted, restraining the governor of Florida from undertaking this canvass? Tilden, I had general information on that subject. I do not know that I had anything more than I got from the newspapers. That proceeding was not dictated from New York, so far as I know, certainly not to me. Hiskek, did you understand that that was advised by the visiting statesmen to the south, who were in Florida at that time? Tilden, I think it was very likely done by local lawyers. Hiskek, did you not understand that there was a strong array of counsel from the north to in the south? Tilden, yes. Hiskek, on both sides? Tilden, yes, sir. Hiskek, from who did you understand that fact? Tilden, I understood that George W. Biddle, one of the first lawyers in the United States, was there, and David Sellers, of Philadelphia, Malcolm Hay, and others. Hiskek, did you not understand that there were a large array of counsel from outside of the state who were in charge of the scheme of procuring returns from the different canvassing boards scattered throughout the state of Florida? And that there was some confusion existing with reference to Louisiana and South Carolina, and that these three southern states at that time were supposed to be very poor indeed, and the Democratic Party very poor. Tilden, I understood nothing about it. I suppose that the committee would take care of their expenses. Hiskek, but you did not trouble yourself to inquire what members of the committee, if any, were here? Tilden, I did not. They changed from day to day. Hiskek, did you understand at the time that substantially the responsible head of the committee, that is, the one who seemed to act for the committee, was Colonel Pelton? Tilden, I do not know how that is. Hiskek, did you ever investigate that question? Tilden, I never did. Did you not understand that there was somebody here in New York who was looking after expenses of the gentlemen who were sent there, and after the expense of sending out the gentlemen to get in these returns? Hiskek, so far as Marble was concerned, instead of communicating with Hewitt or Cooper, he addressed his dispatches to Colonel Pelton. Tilden, Marble is one man. Hiskek, did you not understand that all the gentlemen in Florida addressed their dispatches to Colonel Pelton? Tilden, I never knew to whom they addressed their dispatches. Hiskek, did you not understand the fact to be that all the dispatches sent by them from South Carolina were sent to Colonel Pelton? Tilden, I knew nothing about it until their publication. Hiskek, does it not strike you now as singular, with all the light you now have, as remarkable circumstances, that all of these visiting statesmen held communication with New York through dispatches addressed to Colonel Pelton, and to him only? Tilden, I do not know that that is a fact. Hiskek, do you know that that is not the fact? Tilden, I do not. Hewitt was the chairman of the committee, and they had an executive committee, and some of the members of the committee were there almost every day. Hiskek, do you know that fact, or is that simply what you understood? Tilden, that is simply what I understood. Hiskek, did you make inquiry? Tilden, I don't believe I did. I think the information came to me casually. Hiskek, when Colonel Pelton returned from Baltimore, I suppose that you saw him immediately? Tilden, I saw him the next day. Hiskek, he had been to some extent dependent upon you, I suppose, that is, as a member of your family, and to some extent provided with a position for the support and maintenance of himself? In other words, you were a patron of his? Tilden, to some extent. He had a business of his own, but was unfortunate in it. Hiskek, you learned from Cooper, and you could have learned from Colonel Pelton, that he had been to Baltimore for the purpose of consummating a plan for a purchase, by the action of the Canvassing Board of South Carolina, which would ensure the election of the Tilden electors in that state. Did it not occur to you, upon that being communicated to you, that you ought immediately to find out in what relation he stood to the Democratic National Executive Committee? Tilden, your question assumes more than is true. I did not hear that he had gone to consummate an arrangement, I only heard that he had gone there to receive an offer. Hiskek, is there any difference between the way that you state it and the way that I stated it? Tilden, considerable. Hiskek, would you not infer from his having communicated to Edward Cooper that he would probably draw upon him the next day for from $60,000 to $80,000, and that he had gone to Baltimore to meet Smith M. Weed and another gentleman, who had come from South Carolina to meet him there? Would you not fairly infer from that that he had gone there to consummate a purchase? Tilden, I did not understand that he said he would draw. Hiskek, did you understand from Cooper the sum of money which he stated? Tilden, I presume I did. Hiskek, do you recollect the amount? Tilden, I do not know that I do. I understood that he had gone there in order to receive or to look into a proposition. Hiskek, now, understanding that he had been indiscreet enough to go to Baltimore even to look into a proposition for the sale of the certificate to the electors of that state, did you not think that you were called upon to ascertain his relations to the National Committee? And to ascertain how far he was committing that body, and how far he was committing himself? Tilden, I thought the best way to deal with such a transaction was to stop it, not only to have nothing to do with it myself, but to stop everybody else from having anything to do with it. I think the same thing in Florida would have been better than what was done. I think instead of appointing Noyes, who did not stop it, minister to France, and McClin who did it. Hiskek, don't let us go off on to that question. Tilden, let me illustrate it. After a pause. Hiskek is evidently trying to probe and search my moral standard. Hiskek, no, I am not addressing myself to that at all, I am only investigating the relations which existed between you and Colonel Pelton, so far as you were committed by his action. Tilden, the object is to impute to me some failure of duty. If I answer that question, I propose to answer it fully, I propose to raise the standard as high as I can, and we will see whether the other gentlemen adopt it. Hiskek, it seems to me that, in this examination, the true way to answer a question is to answer it, so far as you can, directly, and not to seek to answer it by assailing anyone else. Tilden, I do not desire to assail anybody, but when a sublimated standard of morals is set up, I propose to analyze it, and to see whether the party that set it up stands up to it. End of Part 3, Chapter 6 continues and ends with Part 4 where Mr. Tilden loses his notoriously known calm demeanor and turns the tables on Reed and Hiskek.